A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam & Company. My name is Cam Edwards. I am so glad you joined us in the program today. We're going to be talking elections. We're going to be looking back at the Virginia elections last week. We're going to be looking ahead to the midterms, which, are 1 year away to the day. November 8th, 2022, we will all head to the polls. We will decide who's going to control the Senate, who's going to control the House, and who's going to control a lot of state legislatures and governorships as well. And, if you're a Democrat, you are maybe even not so quietly freaking out. You're definitely freaking out right now. After the earthquake that was the 2021 elections, where Republicans sweeping statewide elections in Virginia, something they haven't done in over a decade, darn near unseating Phil Murphy in New Jersey, a state that Joe Biden won by 16 points just a year ago. So, yeah, the Democrats are skittish, doesn't even begin to describe it. And then you got this story from the New York Times. Democrats thought they bottomed out in rural white America. It wasn't the bottom. Republicans ran up the margins in rural Virginia counties. The latest sign that Democrats, as one lawmaker put it, continue to tank in small-town America. And indeed, we actually discussed this on Bearing Arms, Cam & Company last week. Good to see the Times recognizing this. They write, in 2008, there were only 4 small Virginia counties where Republicans won 70% or more of the vote in that year's presidential race. Nowhere was the party above 75%. This year, Mr. Youngkin was above 70% in 45 counties and surpassed 80% in 15 of them. Steve Bullock, former governor of Montana, Democrat, said, look at some of these rural Virginia counties as a wake-up call. He says that the Democrats need to compete in more conservative parts of the country. He said, folks don't feel like we're offering them anything or hearing or listening to them. Well, I would agree with that. And I think one of the big issues, frankly, is gun control, which is, look, a right of every American. Whether you live in Midtown Manhattan or rural Montana, it is your right to keep and bear arms in self-defense. But I think it is also the fact that gun ownership is more prevalent in the suburbs and certainly the rural parts of the country than it is in big, deep blue cities, right? And so for quite a while, Democrats have thought, well, you know what, we can ignore the rural vote. Or we can try to appeal to them through things like, rural broadband and stuff like that, but we can go after their guns. And it's okay if we lose that rural vote because it's got to be offset by the gains that we'll make in these cities and the suburbs. Well, clearly, that experiment has been conducted. The hypothesis has been tested. And look, the hypothesis worked until it didn't, right? In Virginia, Democrats did win the last few elections. Joe Biden did win by 10 points last November. But I have argued, and I've been arguing for the past 2 years, that the Democrats' immediate push for gun control, including a ban on AR-15s and quote-unquote large-capacity magazines that Democrats in Virginia tried to put in place, would have required existing gun owners to hand over their guns. I mean, it was Joe Biden's gun ban. It was only done at the state level, and it was done, frankly, before Biden was declared the president of the United States. Democrats in Virginia tried to enact his gun ban. They couldn't do it, by the way, because of a couple of rural Democrat state senators who said, whoa. I mean, maybe if we're talking about, grandfathering in existing owners, maybe I could go along with that, but like taking guns from people, I can't get on board with that. That should have been a red flag warning sign for Democrats nationwide. When rural Democrat senators in Virginia said, whoa, that's a bridge too far for me. I can't go along with that. Democrats should have said, hey, Joe, you know how we were talking about running for president, and I know you want to appeal to the gun control lobby, but maybe you don't talk about taking guns away from legal gun owners. But it wasn't just Biden. It was Biden, it was Beto O'Rourke, it was Eric Swalwell. It was the vast majority of the Democrat Party. And it continues to be the vast majority of the Democrat Party, even though they're not quite as vocal about it these days, right? Well, the New York Times says that not only did Democrats do awfully poorly in the rural parts of Virginia, they did badly in the suburbs as well. They say the twin results raise a foreboding possibility for Democrats that the party has simply leased the suburbs in the Trump era, while Republicans may have bought and now own even more of rural America. Republicans have never had a demographic stronghold as reliable as black voters have been for Democrats, a group that delivers as many as 9 out of 10 voters for the party. But some Democratic leaders are now sounding the alarm. What if rural white voters, of which there are many, start voting that reliably Republican? That'd be bad news for Democrats. But again, it's also a problem of their own devising, because the party continues to treat gun owners, and I would argue white rural gun owners, with contempt. When it's not politicians, it's the left's influencers. I don't know. I don't watch Saturday Night Live. I haven't for quite some time. But every now and then, somebody says something on Saturday Night Live and it makes the headlines, and then you look back, okay. So apparently on Weekend Update, Michael Shea decided to mock Winston Sears, the newly elected lieutenant governor of Virginia, the first black female elected to statewide office in the state of Virginia, a Republican, a first-generation American, a retired Marine, and a staunch Second Amendment advocate. And of course, this was the picture that Michael Shea used, Winston Sears standing there with her AR-15. And Shea said, quote, that she was, quote, attempting suicide by cop by posing with her rifle, and added that, quote, this is actually a win for Democrats because nothing will get Republicans to support gun control faster than this picture. Meaning, of course, and if you're a rural white gun owner, why, you must be a racist. And I would argue that as long as Democrats continue to hold rural voters in such contempt, then they will lose the rural vote by staggeringly large margins. That is the simplistic stereotype that the left applies, I think, to conservatives more broadly, but particularly in rural Virginia and in rural America, right? I'll be honest with you, if you look like me, if you're a white guy over the age of 40, got your ball cap, you got your big beard, you got your hoodie, you live out in the sticks somewhere, why, you must be, in the words of Jeff Foxworthy, a redneck. And not only must you be a redneck, but you must be a racist redneck, right? If you're opposed to critical race theory or the ideology behind it being imposed on your kids, well, that doesn't make you a concerned parent. No, that just makes you a bigot, right? And again, as long as this is the attitude that Democrats bring to voters, yeah, they're going to lose those voters. They're going to lose those votes. Now, look, I'm a conservative. I don't know what it would take for me to vote for a Democrat. It would probably take, you know what? I'll tell you what it would take. It would take somebody who's more conservative than Joe Manchin running as a Democrat. And it would take an absolute loon running as a Republican. And no libertarian on the ballot. That's what it would take for me to vote Democrat. But I realize plenty of my friends and neighbors are more flexible and fluid in their voting preferences. But one thing that they will not endorse is a candidate who views them and their neighbors and their family and their community with disdain. And that is the Democrat Party right now when it comes to rural America. And it doesn't have to be this way. They could, the Democratic Party could say, well, all right, listen, we're hemorrhaging votes because we keep attacking people's, fundamental rights. Maybe we need to show as much respect for the Second Amendment as we do, let's say, the right to have an abortion. But I don't think Democrats are capable of doing that, at least as a national party. I'm curious to see if we find some Democrats running for either local, state office, or maybe even Congress next year who are willing to adopt a pro-Second Amendment point of view, particularly if the Supreme Court comes out and says, look, New York's may issue carry laws, unconstitutional. We're striking them down. You got to have shall issue at the very minimum. If you want to go constitutional carry, that's great, but you at least have to provide a way for the average citizen to exercise their right to bear arms in self-defense. If the anti-gun lobby takes a hit like that, let's say next June or July, it's going to be a little late for Democrats. I mean, that's coming after the Democratic primaries, right? So we're going to be at least close to, if not in, the general election season for the midterms. So I'm guessing we're going through at least one more election cycle with Democrats wedded to this idea that your right to keep and bear arms really isn't a right at all. It's a privilege that can be restricted to whatever extent the state deems necessary. And after that drubbing that I suspect they're going to take next year, then and maybe then, Democrats will be ready to take another look at the legal landscape regarding our right to keep and bear arms and come to the conclusion that not only is trying to ban and arrest our way to safety a bad idea from a public safety perspective, but they are now trying to inhibit the exercise of a civil right. And that puts them on the wrong side of this issue. I would argue the wrong side of history as well. I think the Democrats can turn things around in rural America, but not as long as they are exhibiting this outright hostility towards the Second Amendment and those Americans who exercise their Second Amendment rights. And again, as Michael Shea made clear on Saturday Night Live over the weekend, we are a ways away from the Democrats learning their lesson about treating voters with such contempt. All right, let's go to our armed citizen story, our good deed of the day, our recidivist report. We will start there with a story. Where is this story out of? I got my stories a little mixed up here. Northwest Indiana, Crown Point, Indiana, where a man charged in a shooting on Halloween that left a 13-year-old dead and another teenager wounded. Turns out this guy's actually on probation for another shooting just 2 years ago. Yeah. Desmond Cruz, 23 years of age, from Gary, Indiana, charged last Wednesday with murder and attempted murder in connection with the shooting on Halloween that killed a 13-year-old named Thomas De La Cruz Jr., wounding another as they were trick-or-treating. Record shows that Desmond Cruz was among several men accused of shooting into a group of trick-or-treaters, police still seeking other suspects. It was April of last year that Cruz was sentenced to 18 months in prison and 18 months on probation for a shooting back in September of 2019. April of 2020, he was sentenced to a year and a half in prison. He was out 7 months later. Yeah. Didn't even serve half of that 18-month sentence. Released in November of 2020, according to the Indiana Department of Corrections. According to charging documents in the 2019 case, Cruz fired 13 to 14 rounds from an AK-style pistol into 2 apartments, one of which was occupied by his ex-girlfriend and 2 of her family members, another occupied by a neighbor. He ended up pleading down to criminal recklessness, which is a level 6 felony. He admitted in a plea agreement that he went to the residence to speak to his ex-girlfriend, excessively knocked on the door, fired multiple shots into 2 occupied apartments. And again, got a plea deal. 18 months. Did 7. Back out on the streets. And now he stands accused of murder. Now, it seemed like there was eyewitness testimony that could put Cruz at the scene of that 2019 shooting. I'm not sure why prosecutors decided to go for the plea bargain unless they just wanted the easy win. But if this guy had actually faced real consequences for that 2019 shooting, I think it is very possible that a 13-year-old boy would be alive today instead of being murdered as he went door to door asking for a trick-or-treat. Today's armed citizen story, I got to move on because that one just pisses me off. Today's armed citizen story, Liberty County, Georgia. A man shot and killed after a break-in over the weekend. It's from WSAV. Say it just happened 9 p.m. Saturday in Hinesville, Georgia, at the Victory Manor Mobile Park. Don't have a lot of details about this case, but the sheriff there in Liberty County says that the homeowner shot and killed a suspected burglar as he was trying to get inside the residence. Apparently, he did not gain entry, but he was actively trying to make his way inside. When deputies arrived on the scene, they found the man's body in the road. They continued to investigate the death. Right now, no further details have been made available. We will keep our eyes on this story. Right now, appears to be a clear-cut case of self-defense, but we'll let you know if anything changes. And finally today, our good deed of the day, Honolulu, Hawaii, where a police officer in the right place at the right time, willing able to do the right thing to stop a baby, or to help a baby, rather, who had stopped breathing. Officer Dean Terakawa, who's on duty in East Honolulu, said he was at the Hawaii Kai substation. It was Saturday night. He sees a truck pull into the parking lot. And then two people get out with the baby, and they rush forward. Officer Terakawa said the parents came out. They told me the baby wasn't breathing. Baby was hot, had a high fever, looked like it was going in and out of seizures, like mini seizures. So Officer Terakawa told dispatch, call paramedics. He said the baby started turning blue, so I said, give me the baby. Put him in the back of my truck, just started giving him mouth-to-mouth. After about 10 breaths, baby did inhale. Officer Terakawa says the color came back. Baby still had difficulty breathing, but at least it was breathing on its own. So it's all about saving the baby. And he said, I know exactly what those parents are going through. He said, when my youngest was 17, or was small, he said 17 and a half years ago, same thing happened to her. She had a high fever. She stopped breathing. She had a seizure. He said, I knew exactly what the parents were feeling. He says that he is glad that he was in the right place at the right time, just doing his job, he said. Well, may all be in a day's work for Dean Terakawa, but I certainly do appreciate his willingness and his ability to respond so quickly. Baby transported to local hospital, last report to be stable, and hopefully 17 and a half years from now, the baby's parents can look back and still offer their thanks for a life well lived for their child, thanks in large part to the life-saving efforts of Officer Terakawa there in Honolulu, Hawaii. That is going to do it for this edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. I want to thank you for being a part of the program, as always. Don't forget, by the way, if you like what you heard today, you like what you see at BearingArms.com, you can always become a VIP member. Just go to BearingArms.com/subscribe. Use the promo code GUNRIGHTS, and you will get a significant discount on your VIP membership. It's our way of saying thanks for supporting us, because your support allows us to do things like this program each and every day. Bring you conversations and interviews with folks that you just won't find anywhere else. We know the media out there is awfully anti-gun, but we are doing our best to provide some balance to the conversation. And all you got to do, just go to BearingArms.com/subscribe. Use the promo code GUNRIGHTS, and you can help show your support. And we do thank you very much. We'll be back tomorrow with more of the latest segment news and information. But until then, be well, be safe, and be free.